Everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was created by Jeffrey, who's a beginning photographer from Australia. Jeffrey shot this image with a Samsung NX10 camera body and effective focal length of 30 millimeters. Exposure info we have is f9 and 1/125th of a second. Jeffrey, in his backstory, says he shot this image on Burano Island in Venice. Said he was really drawn by the bright colors and the red bike, and he shot this in very bright light. I'm really drawn by the color too. This image would get my attention right away just based on the very strong color in the image. Something else I'm enjoying is Jeffrey did see the bike as an opportunity to shoot this vignette of the architecture on the street on Burano Island. The bike comes in and represents a potentially very powerful concept in design, and that is the concept of leveraging, where we take a small subject that has a lot of potential design weight, and then we play that off of the rest of the image. Jeffrey's doing that here. The bike has a color, red, that's very high value. There's a lot of contrast that's represented by the bike, and the bike is a highly recognizable subject matter that connects in a very specific way to human activity. All those things give the bike a lot of design weight, but it's very small. It's just beautiful to see it sort of playing off of the rest all the other information in the image in a dynamic way. In addition to very dynamic color and this concept of leveraging, another thing that I enjoy in the image is just the bold quality of shape. All these windows, they're framed by white, the shutters are black, so on top of other ideas that are very bold, we have this real bold series of shapes based on the color and the design of the windows. Not only that, bringing black into the equation here, very powerful from a color standpoint. Black and yellow color combination in nature a lot of times is a warning. Same thing with red and black. Another thing that I'm enjoying about Jeffrey's composition is just the idea that he's shooting a part of the subject. So he's coming in and simplifying, getting away from describing the whole street, going all the way up to the top of the buildings, and that does start to go along with the subject matter. This is a subject matter to me that has enormous power in the department of color and shape, quality of line, and by shooting a part of this, he's emphasizing this sort of more abstract version of reality where we're paying more attention to the underlying structure of the subjects. One other thing that I wanted to point out here is powerful, I think, to think about is the fact that, particularly in architecture, these types of colors that have real strong hue, that have very high levels of saturation, that have real high value, they're very bright. A lot of times they can look great in the harshest light of the day, and you really sort of get a sense of that over in here if you just look at the vignettes or the little crops that could happen on the left-hand side of the image. Just really want to encourage you to continue to think about quality of light instead of some kind of overall sense in photography, to think about quality of light as being relative to your subjects. When I start to think about alternative versions of Jeffrey's image, I do come back to the idea of the bike, come back to the concept of the bike being a main idea, and what are ways that we could potentially make the bike come forward. I think a real obvious thing that you can play around with in this image, because of how graphic it is and how many places there are where you can make a crop that might simplify the image, as we could think about crops. One thing that I might do to this image right away in terms of a crop would be to smooth out this right hand side. Over here, the crop as it plays out on the windows has a very finished feel to it, and on this side there's quite a bit of contrast that's happening right along the edge of the frame. I think that we could come in and affect a very slight crop to the right hand side that might help to simplify this if we were just going to change the image a little bit. So I might come all the way over to that shutter and then go ahead and crop right there, and let me go ahead and do a before and after. So here's before and here's after, and I do like the effect that cleaning up that edge has on this image, because it is very clean and very graphic in a lot of ways, and that's one small way that we might sort of push it more towards that vibe overall. I do think that you could come in and you could push even more towards the bike being a powerful subject here with another crop. So I'm thinking of coming all the way over to right here, and then coming up from the bottom, coming all the way up to the shadow on the bike. and placing it in a very extreme way down in the lower right, and really pushing the idea of leveraging in an exciting way in terms of extreme subject placement when it comes to leveraging. Another thing that I kind of enjoy about this crop is the fact that we've pushed more towards a square. And I think that the windows themselves relative to the frame now are having more of a unifying effect and a stabilizing effect in the other areas of the image besides the bike than they did in the rectangular version of the image. And to me, that starts to make the movement of the bike, the circle and some of the flowing lines, leverage in an even more powerful way against the overall frame now and the way the other shapes relate to the frame. And I really enjoy sort of this version of the image quite a bit. I think another thing that we could do to bring that bike forward is play around with changing this yellow. If you look at the yellow right now, it has quite a bit of red in it, and that ties it to the bike. If we wanted to make the bike separate, we could come in and play around with getting rid of the red and the yellow. And one of the first ways I would think about doing that is going to selective color, straight over to yellows, coming up here to the cyan slider. Opposite of cyan is red. So if I add cyan, I am going to be getting red out of the yellow. And we could just see, I haven't done this yet, we could just see what kind of effect that has. And I do kind of like that. I think we could play around with the quality of the red too, and we could also play around with keeping that yellow bright as we get the red out of it. I'm doing that in a real rough way, and I'd probably do another adjustment layer and a longer critique if we were playing around inside of Photoshop. Let's just continue to push here a little bit, maybe add in a little bit more just straight yellow. And now let's turn the eyeball on and off. And I do like the way that that pops the bike a little bit more. Another thing that I might do now that I've cropped in is I might try to draw the eye a little bit more to this wonderful subject, this little flower that's in a pot that's a magenta. It really plays in a powerful way off of the green, and it starts to take on quite a bit of power on its own if we could add contrast in here relative to the more horizontal version where this was getting lost a little bit. So when I go back now to Jeffrey's original shot and bring up the history here, click on his original version, get rid of that, and say a huge thank you to Jeffrey for sharing a really wonderful image with us. We'd love to hear your feedback about the video today, some suggestions that you might have for alternative versions of Jeffrey's great image. We say a big thank you to you for being here. Hope to see you again real soon on another version of the Daily Critique.